what do you think about Ryan Day and Kirby Smart? I guess that answer would have been different even this time last year than it is now. You'll notice that there's been wild fluctuation around both of them. Ryan Day right now is in the middle of just a figurative storm around the perception tied to his name. Is he one of the best coaches in America? Is he one of the most overrated coaches in America? We haven't necessarily trafficked in that on this show, but it is out there, and it would be ignorant to suggest otherwise. A year ago, famously at this point, Kirby Smart, what had he done? Well, he had gone, I think, 0 for 4 against Nick Saban to that point. They had just lost in the SEC title game, but he was in the playoff, and they were about to go and body bag Michigan and then beat Alabama in a national championship rematch, and they were going to win the title. And then the convention around his name was going to totally flip. We didn't know that yet, but that's what was coming. Maybe the same thing's coming for Ryan Day, for all we know. Who knows? But I was asked over the past week, I was looking through our DMs and our question and answer mailbag. A lot of people were asking some version of the question, how do you think these two compare now? Because some of you have really good memories, and you remember a couple of years ago, I told you that guy right there, if you're watching on YouTube, Ryan Day, I thought next to Nick Saban, he's the guy I would want to attach my wagon to over the next 5 years. That answer is now Kirby Smart. So I'm going to start off by telling you if I have a number 2 position, then it's Kirby Smart. Having said that, I am also one to remind you that at least on this show, we don't do the wild fluctuation. We do the whole honey versus water metaphor, which I've explained many times. And it's Meemaw's anyway, it's not mine. But both programs, I think, have their long-term head coaches. So I want to be really clear where I stand, because then I want to spend the rest of this segment talking about where those guys will actually stand in the court of public opinion based on the outcomes Saturday, and then maybe fast forwarding to LA in the national championship game, because it's really severe for Ryan Day. It's not so severe for Kirby Smart anymore. In fact, if you think about this matchup, it's really weird. Normally, I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, the guy and the team in position for a repeat, they're the ones feeling the immense pressure. They're the ones shouldering the burden of high expectation. And I'm not saying there aren't high expectations for Georgia, but if you're talking about who's feeling more pressure, 10 out of 10 that pay attention to this sport would have to vote Ryan Day and Ohio State. There's no doubt about what Georgia is. Now, whether their team is good enough to win a title this year, that's almost a side conversation. Their program is not being doubted by anyone anymore, nor should it be. Ohio State's program is being doubted. Ryan Day at his core, the tenets and philosophies with which he's built that program are being questioned. Or maybe somebody out there, maybe a lot of somebodies out there look and say, he didn't build it to begin with. That's our problem with him, the doubters out there of Ryan Day. Our problem is he didn't build it. The old Jim Harbaugh quote, he started on third base and now he's just run backwards to second base. So why are we supposed to respect that? Why are we supposed to talk about him in the same breath as the Sabans or the Smarts or the Dabos of the world? How much could that change over the next 8 quarters of football? Really 4 quarters. Let's just take it one step at a time. They're a 6.5-point dog this Saturday against the Georgia Bulldogs. Things are going to shift so radically one way or another for Ryan Day. So the whole comparative analysis of the two coaches, I don't really get into that all that much. But I will say, Kirby Smart, when they won that title last year, it's as simple and as difficult as this. Once you slay the dragon, it only takes one time, because remember, he did something, and Georgia did something that people were knocking him for seemingly not being able to do. You know, the whole book on Kirby Smart, which was dumb to begin with, but the book was, oh, he can't beat Nick Saban. The guy went to overtime with him in 2017. You get to overtime with someone, I assure you, you possess the ability to beat him. Whether you do it or not, that really depends on bounces of balls and field goal kickers and crazy stuff. If you get blown out 44-10, no, I'm going to question you. You go to overtime with someone, you could beat him. Next year, SEC championship game, there's a Hail Mary to the end zone, an attempt to tie the game. I'm standing right down there. You played him close. You could beat him. 2020, a little more decisive. But the point was, it was never he couldn't. It was just that he hadn't. And a lot of people needed to see it. Well, you got it in Indianapolis in early January. So that's out of the way now. What are they saying about Ryan Day? Because I'm not a part of this group right now. Maybe I will be. Maybe you guys have beaten me to the punch. But a lot of folks now are of the opinion that Ryan Day can't win those big games. Ryan Day, when he goes up against a program that, can match their physicality, or a program that has recruited on par with them, they get humiliated and humbled and embarrassed. And people talk about it as if it's happened 10 times. It hasn't, but you know how that happens. So what happens this Saturday, obviously going to go a long way in deciding, fair or not, how the locals and then how national media and punditry and fans and change treat him. But where was Kirby Smart this time a year ago? I keep going back to this because I don't think we do it enough. As fans, I don't think we do this enough. You got to be able to admit when you were wrong, and you got to be able to diagnose after the fact what you said about a guy. And I'm looking at my iJosh right now. It's December 29th. I'm told some people don't like me saying that. I'm going to continue to say it. It's December 29th right now. This is right around that time last year. Seems like so long ago. Everything was being questioned about Georgia. Everything. Because Kirby Smart, had gotten them to the brink again, and they had been embarrassed. They themselves had been humbled in Atlanta by Alabama. And it's the same old, same old. We keep recruiting number 1, number 2 classes. We keep on slaughtering the SEC East. But if we keep on running into Nick Saban in Alabama, what's it all worth? Oh, and by the way, here was part B of that. This quarterback all of you are trumpeting and heralding as the greatest player in the history of Georgia football. A lot of you didn't want him to start the playoff game last year. A lot of you were sitting here saying Kirby Smart's got to make the decision to start JT Daniels. No one wants to admit that. Thankfully, I've made some bad calls in my life, but I was not part of that camp. I was the part of the camp that head coach at Georgia probably knows which guy gives him the best chance to win, and they're going to roll with him. His name's Stetson Bennett. They rolled with him, and he played his best football at the right time. They won the title. Ryan Day. There are people who question his play calling. There are people who question the toughness of his team. Here's what it takes, and here's all it takes. It takes leveraging some favorable matchups. It takes playing a more defensive approach that is centered on winning instead of proving a point against your opponent, which I'm fully convinced they did to their detriment against Michigan. It's all it takes, It's as simple and as hard as winning a big football game. Now, psychologically, if they were to knock down this dragon of sorts this Saturday in Atlanta, boy, what it would do. All of a sudden, we would go from Ohio. A lot of people think Ohio State's going to get run out of the building Saturday. I don't believe that. I think it'll be a competitive game. I picked Georgia, picked them very close. But a lot of folks who are on the extremes, on the fringes of this conversation, would go from Ohio State's going to get run out of the building to there is nothing stopping Ohio State now. If they beat Georgia 34-20 this Saturday night, everybody, I think most people, I think it would be a wide consensus, Michigan's drawing them at the worst time. And I would agree with that, by the way. I'm never a fan of you having to play the same team twice. That's where I stand on that. But I'm saying Ryan Day, all of a sudden, one of my favorite exercises, before we move on here, one of my favorite exercises is to freeze thoughts and opinions. The reason I never radically shift on these guys is because I don't want to be caught by freezing cold takes. I don't want to be that guy who was saying one thing and then I visibly 180'd on that guy after 4 quarters of football. The reality is nothing about Saturday is going to change who he is as a coach. Nothing. He is who he is. You're going to get results, and then those results serve as his resume, and I'm not a fool. I understand how this sport works. It's a result-oriented business. I get that. That's why if you say Ryan Day's resume is not good enough, okay, we can argue about his resume. But there's a sizable portion of the college football public who will quite literally allow the book on him as a coach to be written and or radically altered based on 4 quarters of football. And really out of those 4 quarters based on about a half a dozen plays, bounces of the ball, bobs, if you will, here or there. I never ascribe to that. So I guess a long-winded way of answering the question about comparing the two is I think Kirby right now is where Ryan Day wants to be. I guess the difference is I'm willing to utter the following sentence on top of that. I think Ryan Day is fully capable of getting there. And I don't think everybody else believes in that right now. I do. However, I've picked him to lose, but I was very close to picking him to win. I have no confidence in my pick on that game. No confidence. So, be that as it may, looking forward to a great weekend in Atlanta. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.